Hey guys, Sherry Fox here with What the Fox. Now, how many of you have a toilet that just constantly runs? Or maybe you have a toilet that you can flush it and it takes forever for it to fill up? Well, that's what this one's doing. So, I'm going to show you how you can fix these problems really easy. Plus, we also have a janky MacGyvered handle here, and we're going to fix that as well. So, let's get started. And what we're going to be replacing today is the toilet fill valve. Now, this one's made by Fluidmaster. And you can look on the side and it will show all the toilet fill valves that it can replace. So it's pretty universal, and I think I picked this one up at the hardware store for around $15. Now, what they're going to give you inside is, of course, they're going to give you some instructions. You have a couple of additional parts, which we'll get to those in a minute, and then you have the fill valve itself. Now, what I like about this particular fill valve is not only can you control the water level in the back of the tank, but you can also control the water level in the bowl. Now, the additional parts that they give you, you have basically a wing nut and then you have a clamp. So let me show you how we're going to do this. The first thing we want to do is let's shut the water off to the toilet. Now, if for some reason your handle does not turn easily, I would not suggest that you force this. You can try some WD-40, or if you still can't get it to turn, just go shut your main water valve off. Next, let's flush the toilet completely, and just keep holding the handle until most of the water drains out. Now, there's going to be a little bit left in the bottom, but you can use a towel or sponge and soak up the rest of the water. Now let's go ahead and disconnect this water supply line. Go ahead and get yourself a bucket or a bowl or a towel because you're still going to have some water that may drain from it. Typically, you can probably just loosen this with your hand, but if it's a little tight like this one was, you can just grab yourself a wrench or some channel locks and it should just come free. Now you will expose your wing nut, and this should also come off relatively easy. If you have the newer Flex water supply lines, you can just omit this part, but as you can see, this is an older one, so we're going to go ahead and change it. To do this, all you need to do is grab a wrench or a crescent wrench, turn it counterclockwise, and it should come right off. And guys, if you are worried about getting the right size in your new Flex hose, typically for toilets, it's standard. But if for some reason yours isn't, you can just take the old one into your local hardware store and they can match it up for you. The only thing you really need to worry about is the length from your actual shut-on valve from the water to your toilet. And all I'm doing right here is just putting a little Teflon tape just right around the threads. Now, this isn't necessary. You don't have to do it. I just like to do it. And I also like to make it go in a clockwise direction because that's the way it's going to tighten. It will just help ensure a better seal. Hand tighten it first, and then you can use a wrench. But all you're trying to do here is make this a little snug. You just don't want to over tighten. Remove the clip and your fill valve should just pull right out. Go ahead and take a look at your old fill valve and your new fill valve. If your old fill valve is the correct height, then you can probably just eyeball it and make the new one the same height. All you have to do to adjust this is turn it counterclockwise to make it taller and clockwise to make it shorter. Okay, so now you're probably saying, Sherry, why do we need to adjust the height? Well, that's because you want your fill valve to be approximately 3 inches above your overflow tube. And basically, this is just to ensure that the water in the tank is not going to constantly siphon back into the bowl. And the next thing we want to do is we just want to hand tighten our wing nut on the bottom of our fill valve. Now, you don't want to use any tools on this because you don't want to crack the porcelain. And then I'm just going to put a little Teflon tape right along the threads, and then I'm going to hand tighten my water supply line. Next, let's grab our clip and we're going to put it onto our hose. Now, you can trim this hose so that it doesn't hit the lid or anything, and sometimes it may help to kind of wet the end of this little clip and then just slide the hose on. Now make sure the opening is going to be over the tube because we want the water to run into the tube, not on the outside. So just make sure and don't put that on backwards. The gray dial is going to control the water level that's in your tank, and the blue dial is going to control the water level that's in your bowl. Okay, now guys, you should be able to go ahead and turn your water back on, but as you can see, we've got this handle that needs some attention. So I have to give a shout out to Molly MacGyver for doing this. I mean, we are from the South and they say duct tape works on everything. And yes, it can work in a pinch. And I have to admit, this actually worked. She did a good job. But let's go ahead and get this changed. You know, we're from the South, so I guess we use duct tape for everything. But what we're going to do is let's just undo that chain. This you should be able to... Now this screws backwards. This little screw, it's actually backwards, guys. But what we're going to do, well, we're not going to be able to get this off because of this duct tape. Somebody had some ingenuity here. I'm actually pretty impressed. But we're going to cut this duct tape off so that we can expose this and get it out. Because there's actually a plastic knife. I mean, that took some ingenuity right there to get that on the handle. So anyway, if it hasn't been rigged, you should be able to get, all we're trying to do is get this off. And there's some more pieces in there. So, once we can get that off, then we can go ahead and pull it through the hole. And all I'm going to do, guys, is I'm just going to replace it with this. I mean, you can pick these up relatively cheap at your local hardware store. And it's the same concept. Now that screw, it does screw backwards. So we just want to take that off. And then we will put that right back in the hole, like so. Until we can get it to where it needs to be, and just put it back on. Remember, you're gonna screw left here, not right. It's actually completely backwards. You don't have to tighten it, just make it snug. And then all we're gonna do is reconnect our chain. Now let's turn the water back on. Now once the tank begins to fill, you want the water level to be about an inch below your overflow valve. If your water level is too high, you'll just turn the dial counterclockwise. Now if the water level is too low, then you'll just turn it clockwise. Now after you make the necessary adjustments to the water levels, just flush the toilet and it will adjust itself. Now the same thing applies to the water in the bowl. You'll want the water to come halfway up. So if you've got too much water, then just turn it counterclockwise. If you don't have enough, turn it clockwise, flush the toilet, and then it will adjust itself. Whenever I mess with plumbing, I like to lay a couple of paper towels down in that area. Because what's going to happen is, if water hits this, you're going to be able to see it. I usually leave it there for a couple of days. Even if it dries, it's going to have little marks on it. And it's just that easy, guys. Now, if you like what we're doing here, guys, smash that like button for me. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'll do my best to answer. And can I encourage you to subscribe? I would greatly appreciate it. But when you do, don't forget to click that little bell. That way, when I upload new videos, you'll be the first to know. This is Sherry saying you guys can easily do this. Thanks again, guys, for tuning into What the Fox. Until next time, take care.